Good evening, everyone. I'm Erin Wright, Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy for Brooklyn Borough President Antonio Reynoso. This Uniform Land Use Review Procedure public hearing is being conducted from the Brooklyn Borough Hall courtroom. There are 2 applications on the agenda. Please note that this hearing is being recorded to comply with the Open Meetings Law. The video will be posted on the Borough Presidents YouTube channel. Following the applicants' presentations and our question and answer session, members of the public who are in attendance tonight will have the opportunity to testify on the applications. All comments are limited to 2 minutes. Members of the public may also submit comments to testimony@brooklynbp.nyc.gov for the Borough President's consideration until Friday, December 22nd. Please call the first item.
Calendar item number 1, 341 10th Street rezoning and LSGD special permits. An application by Stellar 341 LLC for a zoning map amendment, zoning text amendment, large-scale general development special permits, and parking special permit to facilitate a 245,000 square foot mixed-use development with 305 residential units and ground floor community facility and retail space at 341 10th Street in Park Slope, Community Board 6, Brooklyn. Community Board 6 voted to conditionally disapprove this application on December 13th with the condition that the developer enter into a community benefits agreement to facilitate the development of the proposed affordable housing and deliver repairs for the existing units. Please state your name and present this application.
Good evening. My name is Richard Lobel of Sheldon Lobel PC. I'll be presenting for Stellar. I'm joined today by Guy James from Marvel, the project architects, as well as Benjamin Rubenstein from Stellar. I will present briefly with regards to the land use items. Guy will then present with regards to architectural aspects, and Benji will discuss operational aspects, and then the entire applicant team is available to answer any questions. So we're here today to talk about the 341 10th Street rezoning, as well as associated special permits. The proposed actions are 4. The first is for a zoning map amendment to change an existing R6A district to R73 C24 and an existing R6B district to R73. We'll go through the area map to discuss with more particularity the nature of the change. The second is, of course, for a text amendment with regards both to the imposition of mandatory inclusionary housing on the site, as well as to allow for the proposed R73 to be included within the MIH program here. The third is for a special permit pursuant to bulk modifications for a large-scale general development. This large-scale development applies to this site as it is over 1.5 acres, and certain height and setback waivers are needed to make the site functional, as Guy can discuss in light of current site conditions. And finally, as is the case with many of such rezonings, we're asking for a reduction in parking with regards to both existing spaces and for proposed new units. So what would this result in? This would result in 2 new buildings on the site, which is located between 9th and 10th Streets and 4th and 5th Avenues within Park Slope. There is a 9th Street building with frontage on 9th Street. This will be roughly 76,000 square feet. Mixed-use commercial and residential building. We're very proud to present this building as it presents 100% affordable units with incomes up to 50% AMI, and these will be reserved for seniors and families. So really quite an accomplishment in terms of the opportunity to generate affordable units and senior affordable units in an area where they are sorely needed. The 10th Street building will be roughly 168,000 square feet, a 19-story mixed-use community facility and residential building, which will provide roughly 205 dwelling units, of which 62 would be affordable. The next slide demonstrates the project area. You can see the context of the surrounding area. This is an area where similar bulk and typology is well known. As you can see, 12 to 14-story buildings near and around the site, as well as larger buildings within the local area. This is the zoning map. We'll go to the next slide, in which you can see it. Well, actually, just to note on the zoning map that you've got a range of districts in the immediate area, including 4th Avenue, which includes a C44D district. The C44D district here, which was mapped in the Gowanus rezoning, allows for an R9A equivalent, up to an 8.5. The C43A district to the east would allow for a R6A equivalent. So really the R73 here with a permitted bulk at 6.0 is very contextual in terms of the grade of zoning districts here. You go from the 5th Avenue frontage and the 5th Avenue R6A up to the are 9A equivalent to the west along 4th Avenue. This is the area map, which we think really well describes the nature of this rezoning and related actions, as well as the appropriate nature of this rezoning. 5th Avenue here at 80 feet wide is a wide street as per zoning. We look to wide streets with regards to the opportunity for site access and such. But this site is not merely bound by one wide street. It is bound by 3 wide streets on this block, including 9th Street, which at 110 feet wide is an extra wide street, and of course 4th Avenue, a major thoroughfare and one of the widest streets in the area at 120 feet wide. So not only do you have phenomenal site access in terms of being surrounded by 3 wide streets, you also, of course, have the amazing availability of transit options here, including 3 subway lines located either on the subject block or within a half block of the subject block. So it's really, quite unique in those terms. The next slide provides historical context and some architectural aspects, and I would defer to Guy to discuss those. Guy?
Yeah, thank you, Richard. So I'm Guy James from Marvel Architects, so I'll talk about the architectural design a little bit. So this slide shows the existing site prior to the construction of the Culver Viaduct in 1929, and afterwards the void that it created in the site that still remains there today. So the massing of the current proposal is really responding to the constraints of the Culver Viaduct and the small slivers of land on either side of it. And really, the massing and the setbacks are dictated by how far into the site we can push the elevator cores while still pulling the massing height down on the mid-block and kind of holding down the mass on either end of the 4th and 5th Avenue. This slide is showing the allowable height on 4th Avenue after the Gowanus rezoning, which Richard spoke about. So these buildings are currently there and are all under the 175 max height that will be built in the coming years. So the proposed development, which you can see in this slide, shows the 10th Street building at 19 stories and the 9th Street building at 17 stories. In total, that'll be about 234,000 square feet of residential space. 6,500 of that will be commercial space on the 9th Street corridor, and 4,500 square feet of community facility space will be activating the 10th Street corridor. So between those 2 buildings, we'll have 305 new dwelling units. 162 affordable units will be within there. And when you combine that with the existing building, you get 459 dwelling units on the site, 162 of which are income restricted, 152 of which are rent stabilized. As well as you can see in the rendering, there will also be green roofs in the open space above the park to mitigate stormwater, and then also on the site will be 39 parking spaces. So this ground floor plan really shows how constrained the site is because of the MTA tunnel as it moves through. And in the kind of darker yellow squares, you can see the cores which are pushed up right against the MTA easement. And that's really setting the setbacks above. And then in between that, we're infilling the program with, infilling the street wall with active programs such as the community facility and the retail, as well as a new accessible ramp up to the MTA tunnel, which is being transformed into a publicly accessible open space with a stairway from 9th Street and this publicly accessible ramp from 10th Street. And that public open space will also connect all 3 buildings and allow the existing tenants and the new tenants to share all the amenities across the building as well. And then this slide kind of shows what we hope that open space to be and the intergenerational community that we're creating there. So this view is looking east on 9th Street as it currently exists. You can see the open parking area to the right, which ramps up and creates a wall and a series of dead spaces along 9th Street, which will then reactivate with the retail along the street wall and infill the 9th Street lobby with the open space up there above. A similar condition is on 10th Street with the wall much higher as the subway comes out of the ground. I believe it's like 30 feet there, and there's parking and dead space at the moment, which we will then infill with the community facility space, the accessibility ramp to the open space above, and the residential lobby for the 10th Street building. This view from 5th Ave and 10th Street shows the 2 new buildings adjacent to the existing building, and you can also start to see the way in which that we're creating a contextual base that steps down at the mid-block and puts the mass towards either end of these wide avenues. You can similarly see the same condition here on the looking down 9th Street at the 9th Street building and the way in which the brick mass steps down as it moves towards the mid-block. So with that, I'll pass it on to Benji from Stellar to talk a little bit about the affordability.
Thanks, Guy. So I'm going to touch on the affordable housing mix that we have here, and we really took a holistic site approach to maximize the amount of affordability we can provide. As Richard described earlier, the 9th Street building is 100% affordable. 30% of the new units in the 10th Street building will be affordable via MAH option 4, and we'll be preserving affordability in the existing building via Article 11. If we compare this project on the right, what we are proposing to what would have been required from the Gowanus rezoning on the left, you'll see that only 25% of the new units would have been required to be affordable, and looking at it holistically on the site, that's 17% of the units. On the right, we have over 50% of the new units as affordable units, adding on the 115 preserved affordable units, that adds up to 60% of the site, new and existing, being affordable. And we wanted to show you also the levels too, to assure you that the bulk of these units, both existing and new, are going to be at these deeper levels of affordability. Again, the blended affordability level of what we're proposing being 67% AMI. And we are really, to go back to what Guy was saying earlier, using this open space and shared amenities, shared greenery, to ensure that we create one tight, stitched together community, as well as providing that public access to bring the public into the site, and partnering with great organizations like Heights and Hills to provide active programming for seniors, as there will be a big senior population at the 9th Street building as well as the existing building, to really enforce and create that strong sense of community. So we'll be wrapping this up. This has been a long, well over 3.5-year process, working with a lot of folks and coordinating with community and key community stakeholders. We're now in the official ULURP process, and second stop along the way at the Borough Presidents' office. So thank you all, and we'll pass it back to Richard.
Thank you. So that concludes our presentation. I would just add that having attended the community board hearings and been engaged in those conversations, not now, in recent, both recently in ULURP and prior, there has been a lot of discussion about Stellar. For the record, we just did want to submit, we've got letters in support from local nonprofit community organizations, religious organizations, and also over 400 letters from existing tenants at 341 10th who are attesting to Stellar's operations and the fact that they operate in good faith and have done well by their existing tenants. So we want to submit this into the record, and with that, the applicant team is happy to answer questions.
Okay, thank you. In response to the community board's recommendation and hearing, is the applicant willing to enter into a community benefits agreement with an affordable housing partner?
Yes, the applicant is 100% committed to entering into a community benefits agreement. We have actually already had conversations with several organizations, particularly Fifth Avenue Committee, who would act as a nonprofit administering agent for that community benefits agreement. So we would, with this process, intend to do that prior to the conclusion of ULURP.
Thank you. Were there any discussions with the MTA concerning accessibility upgrades to the adjacent subway station, including taking advantage of the MTA's zoning for accessibility program?
The applicant actually did engage MTA for some time. Back in March 2022, the MTA, after reviewing this, issued a letter saying that an easement was not needed from the applicant's site, and so that was their conclusive determination with regards to a transit easement. They did issue a letter in March 2022, and we can give you a copy of that.
That'd be great, thank you. And final question, how was the allotment of 39 parking spaces determined, and how does this figure compare to the utilization rate of the existing parking on the site?
Yeah, so with regards to the 39 parking spaces, that was calculated in terms of the existing rent-controlled units within the existing building. And so we are asking, pursuant to this application, for a special permit, as we ask for repeatedly in terms of similar applications in Brooklyn under 74532. So there would be a loss of parking at the site for a number of market rate units, but we also know from our existing environmental assessment statement and can provide additional testimony if desired that that parking had a low utilization rate. This is a site where you literally have 3 subway stations on the doorstep of this property, and we're rarely presented with a condition like that. So our environmental and land use studies have confirmed that the parking here, as would be reduced by the special permit, is appropriate.
Okay. Thank you.
Of course.
The panel is now excused.
Thank you.
We will now call for testimony on this application from members of the public in attendance tonight. Please note that all comments are limited to 2 minutes. Go ahead.
Thank you. So if you'd like to testify, as a reminder, you can fill out a slip at the table, and then they'll bring it up here, and I will call names based on the slips. So first we have Pat B. Tarantino.
Hi, everyone. I am a resident at 341 10th Street. Just want to speak to a few points that were initially brought up. First, there is a counter petition attesting to the poor quality of Stellar Management's treatment of tenants. Currently, I have 2 minutes. Currently, we have 771 names on that petition. The testimony that you've been handed from tenants by Stellar Management, my superintendent came to my door, presented me with a pre-written letter backdated for November 6th, this was in early December, and said, hey, could you sign this if you think I'm doing a good job, him specifically, which might undercut the validity of some of those signed letters that you've received. Unfortunately, this is part of a pattern of behavior that we have seen with Stellar Management. My primary concern here is the city does need additional affordable housing. However, I do not think that Stellar is an appropriate steward. Our building is organized because it is built on a foundation of longstanding tenant families and relationships that have been built over decades. It terrifies me to think of how little ability people dependent on Stellar's management will be when their pipes begin to leak, when the ceiling begins to leak above them. I think that people who are dependent on, the kindness of Stellar are going to be in for a difficult time and may not have the same unified voice that we currently do. I think for the benefit of those future tenants, we have to consider Stellar Management's track record. I have 18 seconds, but I will remind you that in October of 2022, Stellar, among the 7 other management companies, did sue the city in opposition to the no harassment pilot program that they were a part of. I'm sure my neighbors will have other things to say.
Amanda Troutman.
Sure. Yeah, thank you.
Good evening. My husband and I own one of the townhouses on 9th Street where we live with our 3 young boys. I would be lying if I said we weren't upset about the threat of a huge construction site on top of us, but that's part of living in New York. What does not have to be part of New York City experience, thanks to committees like this one, is major safety hazards caused by developers like Stellar with a track record a mile long of publicly documented negligence, broken commitments to committees like this one, irresponsible management, and cutting corners that has led to countless ongoing safety issues in buildings they run, and even a construction-related death in a wall collapse at a Stellar site in Chinatown this year. A Google search brings up countless pages of reporting. We've given you some of it. Lawsuits, judgments against Stellar for getting the permits and rezoning, just like they're trying to do today, that they need to build towers by saying they will build affordable housing and take good care of everyone, and then a year later evicting hundreds of people who can't pay skyrocketing rent hikes. These articles also show Stellar's pattern of breaking commitments they make to local officials and committees like this one in order to get what they want, no matter the impact on the community around them. Why should we grant such unprecedented rezoning freedom to a company who has a D- rating on the Better Business Bureau site and has shown it will not act morally or responsibly or even safely once they get their approvals and break ground? We are for more affordable housing, but please don't put these folks in Stellar's hands. We want to welcome them into Brooklyn safely, and they do not provide running water, heat in winter. They don't address rodent infestations in 341 10th Street as it is. And if a wall collapsed on this new construction, it will collapse onto an MTA tunnel where there are thousands of commuters every morning, as well as onto 13 of our families, including mine. Please don't give such a notoriously untrustworthy company such unprecedented freedom and power in our community.
Thank you.
Rosa Munguia.
I am a resident of 341 10th Street. I have been in that building since I am 1 year old and have gone through numerous management companies in that building. I have pictures today, actually, as I walked out my front door. There is a puddle in front of my door. There are broken pipes in the hallway with canisters full of standing water that were not emptied or will not be emptied for a few months until I say something to the porters. So to say that management is going to, Stellar's going to build additional buildings, can they not take care of the existing building that they own? As far as affordable housing goes, I am a rent-stabilized apartment dweller. I had a 3-bedroom apartment. I had harassing and nuisance neighbors above me. I did get an attorney, and they did switch me an apartment. I downsized to a 2-bedroom. They forgot my rent stabilization addendum, and if it wasn't that I was made aware by a friend who was an attorney, I really should have gotten an attorney. I cheaped out. I would not have gotten my rent stabilization on my new unit. They increased my new unit to 20% than I was paying. So I'm paying now more for smaller space. I am all for affordable housing. I actually received notices from my former apartment, 13C, that had the rent stabilization. They moved in tenants and charged them market rent. And I received those notices for about a year or two. And I'm aware that to destabilize an apartment, it has to remain empty for a certain amount of months. It would be a horror show for them to get these 2 buildings up around us.
Thank you.
Hunter Walker.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Hunter Walker. I'm a lifelong Brooklynite who grew up on 10th Street. First off, I wanted to confirm you all have the petition that over 770 people have signed opposing this project. I also want to confirm you guys have the fact sheet detailing Stellar's many false and misleading statements, which were echoed in their presentation this evening. Do you guys have that as well?
Yes.
Excellent. So, I've been putting this together because I care so much about my block and about ensuring that it remains the kind of vibrant, diverse community I grew up in. That's why I've been working with my neighbors to stand up against Stellar management. And Stellar had over 15 minutes. Do you mind giving me 5 here? Please?
We need to keep it
Okay,
2 minutes.
I'm
to each
upset
person.
because this is happening on the week before Christmas and the borough president didn't bother to show up. Okay? And it's frankly
He's
ridiculous that we're considering this when it's not a final proposal. And it's frankly ridiculous that you're allowing Stellar to stand here and claim a building is going to be 100% affordable when their own environmental assessment statement says that we're talking about 64 to 96 affordable units, which is, by the way, 20 to 30% affordability. And given the company's track record, of which you've heard the real stories about tonight, of which has been reported about in the real deal, right? We know that if we give them the approval to do the minimum, that's what they're gonna do. And they're gonna work backwards from there. So fine, don't give me the full time. But what I will tell you, okay, is that I grew up on this block. Stellar pushed this building off Mitchell Lama. It's clear they don't care about affordable housing. They padlocked the park they now call unused dead space and say they don't need to build. They showed their lack of care for these residents in their management and in this BS loyalty oath they ran around asking people to sign, which was comically over the top, misdated, and obtained under false pretenses. Giving them this project is the equivalent of allowing someone to shoot you and then having them come run in and dress the wound. Stellar has said on their website that they focus on quote-unquote repositioning affordable housing. That's what they've done on 10th. It's what they've done on 341. Their priority is not affordable housing. Their priority is not this block. Leaders in Queens have pushed similar developments to go to 40% affordability. I am asking you to stand at least that strong for Brooklyn. I'm asking the borough president to show up. He's not here tonight, okay? And I also want to say that a CBA, which the community board rightly called for, doesn't involve Stellar with their bad track record hand-picking a nonprofit that has financial ties to the real estate committee. It doesn't involve Fifth Avenue Committee. It doesn't involve Open New York. Stellar has a bad track record. We need real enforcement and a real final plan. That's what the community board
Thank
called
you.
for. Mr. Reynoso needs to show up and at least call for the same.
Thank you. Can you call the next?
Ravi Sharma.
My name is Ravi Sharma. I'm a 9th Street resident. I want to reiterate and point out the unprecedented type of building that's going to be put over top of at least 15 houses on 9th Street and on top of a subway tunnel. Nothing like this has been done in Brooklyn. Nothing like this has been done in New York since the Hudson Yards. This is not the Hudson Yards, but that's the type of building they're going to have to do. When Stellar was asked how they were going to put pylons in the back of everybody's backyards to build a building over top of the subway tunnel, they said, "We don't know. We haven't looked into methods and means yet." They're coming to you with a half-baked plan with photos and pictures of a rendering that they're not required to build. Have you taken a look at their building? Go take a look at how they've taken care of their building. They will build an ugly building just like what they've allowed to occur at the corner of 9th and 5th. All right? They may not say that they're putting commercial activities or buildings on top of 10th Street, but the reality is the front full area is going to be for commercial-like activities, whether it's a community center or a retirement center. It's going to be commercial-like activities, and they're going to have businesses on the other side on 9th Street. They've not talked about how they're going to deal with the traffic on a residential street like 10th Street. Allowing someone that has no good track record and has a safety negative track record where they've allowed a wall to fall and someone to die is absolutely irresponsible. If something goes wrong at this location, you have 15 120-year-old brownstones that are likely to be crushed by whatever happens, not to mention be shaken to their foundations by the type of activities they're trying to do by building huge pylons to build a bridge over top of a subway tunnel where you have tons of people every single day, children and residents trying to commute. This is irresponsible, and you should not allow it to happen.
Thank you.
Vivian Nazario.
Hi, I live at 341 10th Street. I have been living at 341 10th Street since I was 8 years old. I'm 51 years old. I am not for these two buildings. First of all, they need to take care of the building that they have now before they want to build two buildings. Their customer service is horrible. I send emails, I call, I cannot get through. How do they think they're going to have two more buildings if they can't take care of the one building that they have? You know, it's unacceptable in my book. I mean, the parking is terrible. People don't come visit because they can't find parking. So just imagine if they eliminate all these parking spots, people are not going to be able to be with their families and their loved ones. Come on now. It's unacceptable in my book. We need to take care of the building that we live in now, okay? This by far is the worst I have seen it in the 43 years that I have been living there. I am not happy, and I am not content, and we need to definitely do something about this. I am not with this.
Thank you.
Sarah Pennenberg.
Thank you to the Brooklyn Borough President. My name is Sarah Pennenberg, and I work at SEIU 32BJ as a political coordinator. I appreciate the opportunity to share my comments today regarding the Stellar Management Building. SEIU 32BJ is dedicated and represents the interests of 175,000 members across 11 states in Washington, D.C. Our union members are the pillar of the property service sector here in New York and perform crucial roles in commercial and residential buildings, stadiums, airports, and multitude of other locations. Our diverse membership has a common goal to elevate employment standards throughout the industry. 32BJ has secured a credible commitment from Stellar for the creation of good and permanent jobs at this residential housing project. We estimate that there will be a total of 5 additional residential jobs at this site, and current Stellar management is a worksite for 32BJ members. When completed, the project will provide quality jobs that will uphold and protect prevailing wage standards in our industry. There will also be a quick and peaceful pathway to unionizing if the employees decide. 32BJ is proud to support the development. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
32BJ was also proud to support the Borough President with mailings.
Please. Alex Lieber.
Good evening. My name is Alex Lieber. I'm with AKRF. I'm with the applicant team. We're the environmental consultant for the project. We prepared the environmental assessment statement in consultation with the Department of City Planning as lead agency. I'm speaking now because I just want to provide a clarification to a comment that was made earlier that cited the affordable unit count that was cited in the EAS, which was 64 to 96 affordable dwelling units. As the EAS states, the environmental review was conducted in accordance with what's called a reasonable worst case development scenario, which is typical for these projects that are going through ULURP and going for review under the seeker guidelines. So under those guidelines, we are asked to make conservative assumptions on the project that we are going to be analyzing. And in the case of this project, it's a very standard approach to assume a sort of a very basic 30% assumption of affordability when determining the reasonable worst case development scenario for the purposes of analysis. So that is what is cited in the EAS. And as is stated in the EAS, that is sort of an undercount that was done for conservative analysis purposes, and it acknowledges that the project will include more affordable units than what is assumed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Where does it say that? Because it says 20, not 30. It doesn't say any of that other stuff.
There's no further. That's fine. That concludes all of the testimony slips delivered to us tonight.
Yeah. Is there anyone else who would like to sign up to deliver testimony? No. Okay. All right. Thank you. Hearing no further comment, this item is now closed. And please call the next item.
Calendar item number 2, City of Yes for Economic Opportunity, a citywide zoning text amendment submitted by the Department of City Planning to support economic growth and resiliency in New York City. This text amendment would facilitate the repurposing of existing non-residential space by providing businesses with additional zoning flexibility to locate, and it would add new manufacturing districts to the city's zoning resolution. The proposed zoning text amendment would apply to all 59 of the city's community districts. This item was referred to all community boards and borough presidents by the City Planning Commission on October 30th, 2023. Please state your name and present this application.
Thank you. Good evening, and good evening, everyone. My name is Matt Waskiewicz. I'm a senior planner here at the Department of City Planning in our Economic Development and Regional Planning Unit. I'm joined by 3 other city planning colleagues, Carolyn Grossman-Marr, Director of Regional Planning and Economic Development, and from DCP's Brooklyn office, Alex Sommer, Director, and Lucia Marquez-Reagan. Starting at the highest level, City of Yes is 3 separate but related initiatives that are designed to modernize and update our city's zoning to support small businesses, create affordable housing, and promote sustainability as part of our mayor's vision for a more inclusive and equitable City of Yes. Where we are in the process, so City of Yes for Economic Opportunity is the second in sequence of 3 reforms to our zoning resolution. The other 2, just to mention briefly, City of Yes for Carbon Neutrality has been adopted by the City Council, and initiative is designed to help New York City meet its climate goals. City Yes for Housing Opportunity is an inclusive citywide approach to our city's affordable housing crisis, due to enter public review next spring. Before we dive into the policy itself, I think it's helpful to go over briefly what zoning governs when it comes to businesses in New York City. Zoning defines hundreds of uses or business types, sorts them by zoning district, and regulates things like the kinds of business activities allowed within a space, how big you can be. And in many ways, these zoning regulations are unchanged since 1961. And so they are full of outdated and sometimes counterproductive regulations on small business activity, all of which can make it difficult for you to locate, grow, and operate a small business. So over the last year and a half, we've been speaking with organizations across the city and within the borough of Brooklyn to understand the ways in which our zoning might be getting in the way of establishing or expanding small businesses. At the same time, we've been reaching out to members of community boards and the general public to understand the ways in which these zoning proposals also could be shaped. So just want to highlight a few organizations here in Brooklyn. We've been working very closely with organizations like the Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce, business improvement districts, as well as industrial service providers, and then organizations that are in the nonprofit and advocacy space, such as the Freelancers Union. So a lot of what we've been discovering through this outreach and engagement work was that it is very difficult to start and locate and operate a business in New York City. And so we want to make sure, as an overarching work for this initiative, that our zoning is more simple, more adaptable, and more modern. 4 goals for the initiative. First, we want to make it easier for businesses to find space and grow, so these are ways in which our zoning makes it hard to locate, particularly in storefront and empty office space. We want to lift those barriers. Goal 2, support growing industries. These are emerging business types that our zoning has identified a barrier to that growth, that we want to either clarify some of that ambiguity or reduce those obstacles. Goal number 3, we want to enable more business-friendly streetscapes. So these are ways in which business activity can sometimes spill over and create conflicts with the surrounding sidewalks and streets. And goal 4, we want to create new opportunities for businesses to open in the future, updating our zoning toolkit, so ways we can boost job growth and business expansion. Within these 4 goals, we have 18 distinct initiatives or proposals. I'm going to go through these at an extremely high level, but happy to go into detail in Q&A. Goal 1, we want to make it easier for businesses to find space and grow by lifting zoning barriers so that businesses can locate close to their customers. So in most cases, our zoning rules governing businesses, they've been unchanged for more than 60 years, and it's long past due to update our zoning to reflect and respond to today's economy. So our first 6 proposals do exactly that. Make sure our zoning is more simple, more adaptable, and more modern so that small businesses can more easily locate and grow. So proposal 1 today, storefronts that are deemed legal non-conforming, they face an arbitrary 2-year time clock for reactivation, or else they have to remain vacant. This is a direct contributor to storefront vacancy across our city. And so we are proposing to remove that 2-year time clock so vacant storefronts can be reoccupied. Proposal 2, in many places of the city, we have similar zoning districts that are located along the same street or on opposite sides of a street, and yet they allow for different businesses. For example, Court Street in Brooklyn is a great example of this. On one side of the street, you have a C1 district. On the other side of the street, you have a C2 district. Different kinds of businesses allowed on either side of the street. We think this is outdated and it doesn't make sense, and so we want to allow for similar businesses along similar commercial corridors. Proposal 3, despite changes in technology and a vastly different economy, our city's zoning rules for small-scale manufacturers and other production businesses, they're stuck in the 1960s with how they treat kinds of makers businesses like pottery studios, bakeries, coffee roasters, jewelry makers, apparel designers, microbreweries, 3D printers, and the like. We want to allow for those kinds of businesses to locate in commercial districts, many of them for the first time, but making sure that there are strict environmental standards in place so they're appropriate near neighbors. Proposal 4, today, zoning allows for, if you were one of those maker businesses I just mentioned and you wanted to locate in an empty office block, you might face rules that make it hard to add additional loading docks, even if you don't need them, and even if the building can't physically accommodate them. So what we want to do here is allow for older commercial buildings to change over time, not mandating that a business tear apart the ground floor of a building to provide new loading docks it doesn't need. Proposal 5, zoning today allows for many buildings to have a mix of residential and commercial uses, but our zoning sometimes restricts use of upper floors. So this limits options for new buildings to be built over time that contain both residential and non-residential uses. It also limits partial conversion of empty offices to residential uses, so we want to enable that here. In Proposal 6, our zoning hasn't updated the terms it uses to classify businesses since the 60s, so it's full of things like typewriter repair and shoddy manufacturing, wool manufacturing. It makes it harder for newer business types like cell phone repair shops to know where they can go, so we're proposing to simplify and modernize the terms we use to classify businesses. Goal 2, we want to boost growing industries by removing ambiguity and obstacles in the way for emerging business types. So each of the industries that are highlighted here are ones that are growing in the city. These are not the only industries that are growing, but they are ones where we've identified a zoning barrier to growth. Proposal 7, we want to allow operation of indoor agriculture facilities such as vertical farming within commercial areas, because today you can have a greenhouse in commercial areas, but you can't do the same thing within a building, so we want to clarify our zoning to enable that. Proposal 8, life sciences laboratories, they face outdated terminology that slows the development of new facilities, so we want to make it clear that labs without potential for environmental hazard are appropriate for office settings. Proposal 9, any bar or restaurant in the city, you can have live music or concert up to 200 people, but you can't dance in many places to that music. This is a holdover from the cabaret laws that have been used in a discriminatory way over the last several decades. So we want to say in small spaces, you can have dancing in the same places where you can have live music or comedy today. Proposal 10, zoning has outdated terms for experiential businesses, things like virtual reality or children's arcades, and it mostly restricts these kinds of business activities to industrial areas or Coney Island, so we want to enable them at a small scale along neighborhood commercial corridors. And then lastly, on home occupations, many New Yorkers start their business in the home, and our zoning has flexibility for this kind of work today. You can have lawyers, jewelry makers, and music teachers and the like, but our zoning hasn't kept up with the way that New Yorkers are working from home in the pandemic, and so we want to modernize these rules while keeping in place safeguards to ensure quality of life. Goal 3, we want to increase and enable more business-friendly streetscapes, so we know that business activity isn't just what happens within a space, but how a business interacts with its surroundings. So these 3 proposals are designed to do exactly that and create more safe, active, and walkable streets. Proposal 12, most parts of our city, you don't have any sort of commercial ground floor rules to prevent things like a long blank wall or parking locating in the front of the building, creating a strip mall type feel. So we want to introduce corridor design rules that enhance the ability for businesses to interact with their surroundings. Proposal 13, auto repair businesses, they're mostly industrial, and we think they make sense in industrial areas. However, some forms of auto repair today can locate on a neighborhood retail street. This creates conflicts oftentimes with pedestrians or cyclists or cars passing by. We want to create some site plan review if they're going to locate in commercial areas. 14 on microdistribution. Post offices are allowed today, but if you're the federal government, you can't do that same sort of delivery activity. And so you see a lot of what's in this photo today where you see double parking in the sidewalk, delivery activity in the public right of way. That's in part because zoning doesn't allow for this kind of activity within storefront space. So we want to create a new kind of use that would allow it. I'm going quickly, but I'll finish off the last 4 proposals. So these are all new ways in which we're expanding or modifying our zoning toolkit. So the ways that you modify the existing zoning, this could be special permit processes, or this could be new kinds of zoning districts themselves. And so each of these proposals, they would go through a public review process that includes the community board, but they provide new pathways to businesses. 15 on-campus commercial. Most large-scale residential campuses, such as NYCHA, they're zoned as residence districts. They limit the ability for retail services and makerspace. What we know is that there's great demand for this kind of space, so we want to create a pathway to allow for limited commercial space on large-scale campuses. 16 on corner stores. Zoning doesn't allow in a residential area to locate a new kind of small-scale neighborhood serving store to locate, so we want to create a process for that. Proposal 17, some types of businesses have the ability to waive, say, the shape of their building or some other smaller type of zoning regulation, but This is an inconsistent process that we want to create a more streamlined waiver process. And then lastly, around new districts, sometimes it's the zoning districts themselves, not a way to modify them that's most out of date. So what we want to do here is create a suite of new kinds of manufacturing districts, in particular that would expand the zoning toolkit for the future and recognize that in some areas there's the need to preserve existing industrial businesses, and then in some areas we want a mix of preservation and growth. So we're creating for the first time a suite of tools to do that. So I'll close on other resources. There's a lot in here, and I was speaking pretty quick, so if you're new to this and want to learn more, nyc.gov/yes economic opportunity. We have resources on each of the 18 proposals in greater depth. We have existing conditions on looking at storefront vacancy and jobs across every community district in the city. For those who are more technically inclined, we have the zoning text itself with annotations and comments to help you understand it. And then we also have translated every single use in our zoning today to what we're proposing in the future and back. So if you do taxidermy for a living, never fear, you'll still know where you can locate. And with that, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Just a few questions. The new core manufacturing district included in Proposal 18 would limit all non-industrial uses when mapped. Would this include nightlife and entertainment uses?
Those would fall under the definition of non-industrial. So yes.
How do the new proposed M districts compare to other industrial zoning tools developed by the department, such as MX zones or the IBIA program?
Mm-hmm. Sure. Thanks for the question. So on these new tools, the idea is that they're potentially applicable citywide in a variety of cases. And so we worked very hard over the last year and a half with industrial service providers, not just in Brooklyn, but also in Queens and the Bronx and Staten Island, and really trying to understand what are the full range of possible tools we need anywhere. And that's one of the ways in which we recognize that these tools could be designed to be used in a city-led neighborhood-wide initiative or in private applications. And so they provide a lot of ability to have as-of-right development in ways that other existing tools are more difficult. So that's on the difference between these new tools and IBIA in particular. And when it comes to MX districts, MX districts we've had for 30 years, where you have the ability to pair an M1 district with a residential district and provide a mix of industrial and residential in the same place. So it's our intent that the M1 growth, the M1A, could be paired with residential in certain circumstances. But again, none of these would be mapped as a part of this proposal, so that any conditions under which we would have residential with a growth district, of course, would go through the full community process in determining what is appropriate for a particular location.
Okay, thank you. Please elaborate on Proposal 13. How will rationalizing and consolidating auto servicing uses address vehicle storage on sidewalks? And will DOB or DOT be given new enforcement directives?
Sure. So on Proposal 13, today in our zoning, most kinds of auto repair are considered industrial. They're allowed only in our city's M districts or in the C8 districts. There are some kinds of auto repair that are considered commercial. They're allowed in any commercial district. Particularly, they're allowed as of right in C2, C4, and C6 districts. They're not allowed in C1 and C5 districts. What this proposal does is it consolidates the range of auto servicing that's currently allowed in commercial areas and consolidates the range of auto servicing that's currently allowed in industrial areas, and says that if you're going to operate in an industrial area, you're considered heavy auto repair, and you would have to get a license through the state DMV, but you're allowed to do anything that you're doing today as of right in those districts. But if you're not getting a license from the DMV, then you're considered light auto repair, and you can locate in any commercial district provided you go through a BSA process that includes site plan review, just to make sure that you're not going to have activities that are spilling out into sidewalks, out into the streets. And so we're trying to make this distinction between auto repair that is appropriate along a neighborhood street, neighborhood retail street, and one that's more appropriate for areas with more industrial character. Does that make sense?
And last question, would the department be willing to consider including text for the citing of last mile facilities in this text amendment?
Thank you for the question. So it's our understanding that there is a current private application to consider citywide text changes to last mile facilities. We've been taking a look at this. It's our understanding that any sort of changes to the way that last mile facilities or large scale warehouses are considered would require a full environmental impact statement. And so they're not something we were able to accommodate as part of this process. Anyone else from the DCP team, would you have anything you'd add? Okay, we're good.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So we will now call for testimony on this application from members of the public. Please note that all comments are limited to 2 minutes.
So again, anyone wishing to testify can fill out a slip back at the table, and we'll read them off here. First is Stephen Fabian.
Hello, I'm Stephen Fabian. I am the Planning and Real Estate Manager at Evergreen, Inc., your North Brooklyn Business Exchange. We are a membership organization that champions manufacturing, creative production, and industrial service businesses in North Brooklyn and beyond. We're excited to discuss this City of Yes for Economic Growth proposal and appreciate the administration's intention to keep New York City a thriving city. And we also believe there are ways the proposal can be improved to ensure that it achieves its goals of fostering businesses and job growth in NYC, particularly as relates to industrial manufacturing. We think that the attention paid to updating zoning policy in industrial areas is very welcome, and we're particularly glad to hear that there is not a plan to allow residential uses in industrial business zones. Obviously, it's a very broad proposal, so I'll just sort of give our high-level support points that we wanted to share today, including that we support the overall increases in FAR for industrial uses throughout the new districts, the new M-zone districts. We support the modernized use group classifications and revamping, supporting the loosening of parking requirements and updating to the general loading requirements to enable adaptive reuse, as well as the updated bulking requirements and the other pressure relieving measures that will allow and alter some other uses in commercial zones that were discussed earlier. Some of our brief recommendations are that in any area where there's incentivized industrial growth, that some mechanism for oversight be considered. I know that can't be in the text, but it should be discussed in policy. We also would like to see a cap in the core for non-industrial uses at 10,000 square feet and a minimum of 1.0 FAR in transition and growth areas for industrial retention. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jared Grimm.
Good evening. My name is Jared Grimm. I'm the Vice President of Real Estate and Economic Development at the Downtown Brooklyn Partnership. On behalf of Regina Meyer and DBP, I'd like to express our strong support for the Department of City Planning's City of Yes for Economic Opportunity zoning text amendment to modernize city zoning rules in support of small business and creating thriving commercial corridors. In this time of recovery, it is crucial to remove outdated limitations on businesses and ensure that our central business districts and commercial corridors remain dynamic and vibrant. We would like to highlight the following proposals that are of particular interest to downtown Brooklyn. Allowing opportunities for a greater diversity of businesses to locate on ground and upper floors. This change would enable establishments beyond traditional retail stores to activate space along our main shopping corridors. Additionally, allowing commercial uses above the ground floor of residential buildings would allow food and beverage establishments to locate in new and unique spaces. Supporting nightlife and entertainment through more common sense regulations. Currently, entertainment uses such as arcades, virtual reality, and bowling alleys are constrained or prohibited along Fulton Mall. These uses will support ground floor vitality in downtown Brooklyn, in addition to complementing the street's other retail businesses by encouraging much-needed foot traffic on the evenings and weekends. Removing use and bulk regulations for businesses in growing industries, such as life sciences and film production. These uses are fully compatible with downtown Brooklyn's existing complement of tenants and institutions, and we fully support the change to stimulate the post-pandemic office market. We encourage you to support the City of Yes for Economic Opportunity, zoning text amendment that will drive business growth and foster dynamic opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Carly Baker Rice.
Thank you. I represent Red Hook Business Alliance. We represent freelancers, manufacturing, retail, people who work out of their home, all businesses and nonprofits in Red Hook. Our recent work has involved a streetscape analysis, a business inventory, and other forms of engagement with merchants and consumers to better understand some of the exact needs that are addressed in this proposal. We are grateful for the effort and the desire to address some very clear examples of planning gone bad. In Red Hook, we also know what it looks like when there is a lack of planning, so we're very grateful to our Borough Presidents Office for doing comprehensive planning. However, one thing we would like to see with this proposal is clear definition for how this will address last mile warehouses and their business models, in addition to a rubric and format that can better support both the uptake and utilization of this program, as well as maintaining the original intent. So I'll start with last mile warehouses and just say that they are probably the #1 threat to small business in New York City, not just in Red Hook. Last mile warehouses are only required for 1 to 2 day delivery subscription products. They are not needed. We wouldn't need one single last mile warehouse in New York City to serve 4 or 5 day delivery models for e-commerce. This is not about e-commerce. Our small businesses need e-commerce. Last mile warehouses compete with our small businesses and our commercial districts, just as you're trying to support, because they're just for 1 to 2 day delivery. They also drastically harm the streetscape, and I invite you to come down to Red Hook and see what some of these facilities feel like as you walk past them. They're exactly the type of thing that you're working against. With regard to the format of the proposal, can I have just a few more seconds?
You can submit your testimony in writing.
Okay. I would suggest in the format that you provide a rubric that provides an ideal example of the problem you're trying to solve, one that is an okay example, and something that is a loophole or a negative use of this, because we don't want this to become loopholes for non-local businesses, non-small businesses, and bad actors.
Thank you.
Rafael Espinal.
Good evening. My name is Rafael Espinal. I'm the Executive Director of the Freelancers Union, also a former New York City Council member. And I'm here to address a crucial initiative that holds the key to unlocking economic opportunities for freelancers and small businesses across our city, and express my support for the City of Yes for Economic Opportunity proposal that seeks to modernize our outdated zoning regulations. In the wake of the pandemic that has reshaped the way we live and work, more people than ever before are embracing independent and entrepreneurial paths. Whether they are recent college graduates armed with skills in design and marketing, or seasoned professionals seeking greater flexibility, the future of work is undeniably changing. Our city is home to over 1.3 million freelancers, whom the Freelancers Union supports in various aspects of their professional lives. The City of Yes for Economic Opportunity proposal represents a groundbreaking effort that will massively benefit New Yorkers. Firstly, the initiative will mark the largest expansion of space for makers and artists who are the building blocks of the New York City creative workforce. From pottery studios to microbreweries and Etsy sellers, the current zoning regulations force successful small business owners into distant manufacturing zones. Secondly, the proposal aims to update and eliminate discriminatory restrictions on home businesses. In a post-pandemic economy where even full-time employees are working from home, banning home occupations like barbers or interior designers is out of touch with the evolving nature of work. Lastly, this proposal seeks to rectify outdated rules on the nightlife and entertainment. As a New York City council member, I led a charge to repeal the cabaret law, a law that impeded our vibrant city life by restricting dancing and stifling businesses which disproportionately affected our diverse communities and small businesses. This proposal seeks to enshrine this repeal and clarify outdated regulations, ensuring that New York City's nightlife is as dynamic as its people. However, for this initiative to succeed, we do need the collective support of the Brooklyn community and the Brooklyn Borough President's office. New York has always been a place where dreams could become reality. Let us not allow the zoning regulations of the 1960s to impede our vision for a vibrant and prosperous city in 2023. So with that said, again, Freelancers Union is in full support and look forward to working with everyone to make this a reality. Thank you.
Thank you.
Andrew Stlarine?
Hi, I'm Andrew St. Laurent. I just want to speak briefly to the City of Yes. One of the things, this was bullet point number 2 on the list of goals, was to simplify zoning districts. There was a C1 and a C2 on opposite sides of the street. I can't speak for or against City of Yes, but I certainly speak for comprehensive zoning proposals and zoning amendments and comprehensive zoning restrictions that look at a city, a borough, a neighborhood comprehensively, and does not look at a developer by developer or a building by building system of zoning where people can put inconsistent uses on the same block regardless of the effects that they may have on the surrounding structures. I believe that the practice of spot zoning is now and has always been illegal, yet nonetheless, these spot zoning proposals, including one tonight, continue to march through the ULURP process without a word being raised. So a word has been raised. Thank you very much for my time.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to testify on City of Yes for economic opportunity?
Okay. Thank you. This ULURP public hearing is now closed. The Borough President will review the applications and submit his recommendation to the City Planning Commission, which will hold their hearing at a later date. As a reminder, members of the public may submit comments to testimony at brooklynbp.nyc.gov for the Borough President's consideration until Friday, December 22nd. This meeting is now adjourned.